Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with our Survivor Edge of Extinction Episode 7 recap. Tonight we saw the Comma 6 Alliance implode. We saw Eric, the firefighter, get completely blindsided. And we saw Kelly Wentworth and Lauren not even have to use their idols in order for all of this to happen. We saw the rebirth, I guess this is like the real birth, of Julia Carter, because she was not there, then she was there, and then tonight she orchestrated the biggest move of the season up to this point. So congratulations to Julia. And unfortunately for Eric, because I didn't pick him on my fantasy team and instead I picked Ron, they decided to vote Eric out instead of Ron, and my 5-person fantasy team for the ages is still intact. I just want to keep throwing that out there just in case Vaughn is listening, and because Alexa lost her second person tonight.
I know I've had a tough 2 weeks, but Vaughn is still kicking. He's somehow still alive.
Yeah, he got Rick Devens, who, if we were still doing LVP, Rick Devens would be the LVP
He had a
episode.
Tough episode.
This is one that I kind of wish I would have been here last week and you would have had to deal with intern this week, because that would have been perfect. Because right now I'm going to kind of rip on Rick Devens, and I'm still a big Rick Devens fan, but he played horrible Survivor tonight. And I don't like that intern got to be so happy last week when this week he would have had to try to defend Rick Devens and his emotional gameplay, which was infuriating to watch because Rick Devens is a big Survivor fan. Open your eyes. I mean, come on, man. Like, he was so bitter about this. And I understand where it's coming from because he's been voted out of the game and now he's back in. And he knows when there were 5 Lesu before, he was 5th. So why should he think it's any different now? But you're going to be number 8. Like, does he not realize he was number 8? And good on Julia, good on Victoria, good on Gavin. They realized they were number 8. And we're going to talk a lot about this Aurora thing tonight, where she was talking during the immunity challenge, which some people are probably very against. I am all for it. Go Aurora. Game didn't end. Jeff didn't think it was serious enough to stop the challenge. It's not serious enough for you to stop talking. But I love that the 4 comma who felt they were on the bottom pulled it off. I hate, though, that they didn't convince Kelly Wentworth and Lauren that they were still going home, because now Kelly Wentworth and Lauren still have 2 idols. And that is very dangerous.
Yeah, that was actually a fantastic recap of this episode. I feel like so we're good, right? Like this. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, we'll see you guys on Sunday. No, that I completely agree with all that. The Rick stuff, we got to FaceTime in intern, or we should have texted him. Why didn't we shit text him? I know. Where that was a huge ball drop on our part.
But I'm crying his own.
Yeah, he's probably very upset. But that was tough with Rick, because like you said, I totally get it. I completely get like him being upset. With him, I know like there was this interview that came out where they extended Kelly's confessional from last week, where she wasn't actually pissed off that it was Rick who came back. She had no problem with it being Rick who came back. And so Rick being the like quote unquote clear bottom of that Lesu, which he's been saying, I still guess I just don't see that, because it was a split vote when Rick went out. It wasn't a 4-1 vote. And I think you see War Dog, he's like, I'm trying to play logically here. And you see David and War Dog agreeing with each other. And they're like, you need to see this. And I don't know what it's like to be voted out of Survivor. And I certainly don't know what it's like to be voted out and then being back in. So I'm sure that adds a completely different layer of frustration and lack of trust. But I think it's Stephen Fishback who says, say yes to everything, like whatever, and then deal with the consequences later. When Rick was like, oh yeah, I'm down, except for the fact that I'm not, War Dog was like, whoa, like what? Like that was just, and then he just doubled down on it, and he's smiling, so I couldn't tell if he was actually mad. It was really odd.
Can I ask this is like a question for the viewers and Alexa, based on what you just said there. Was everybody thinking Rick was being sincere, or was everybody picking up on the sarcasm there? Because I don't know if it's just because I'm a super sarcastic person, but as soon as Rick started doing that, I was like, damn, I've done this before. This is how I've spoken to people right before I'm about to drop the ball on them and say, no, I don't want to ever talk to you again. Or like even if you're going the opposite route, where you're telling somebody how much you hate them, and then you're saying like, yeah, of course I hate you. Like, I just can't stand your face. And then you just turn, you're like, of course I don't hate you. Stop being stupid. I could tell right away, and I don't know if everybody got that, or because it was a great scene. I thought it was an absolutely amazing thing. I thought it was hilarious. But as Rick was doing that, I was like, is he going to drop the other foot here, or is War Dog just going to be oblivious to this? Because War Dog did not pick up on it right away. He had no idea.
I'll admit I didn't pick up on it until right after he like immediately said, absolutely not. I was like, oh, crap, like now I'm looking back on his tone, and that was coming. And Rick is also like, he's got a little egg on his face too, because now like he's the one who looks over to Ron or Eric and he's like, I actually didn't screw you guys. Like I'm the only one who didn't. So Rick's in a really weird spot now. And with this whole half idol thing, David's not giving it up.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't blame David. That's why this idol was actually really, this is why I kind of defended it. And I would have defended it if I was on the recap last week a little bit more. But I think the reason I like this is because it's not a guaranteed idol. And because we still have to have people making decisions. And as we saw within 3 days, David and Rick went from best buddies who would do everything together to David not being able to convince Rick and thinking Rick's kind of insane. And if that's what he's going to think, he's never going to give Rick that half of the idol back, because why should he give Rick any power in the game? And I love that David said, no way I'm holding on to this. You're not going to get this back from me until you like prove that you're not a crazy person. And it's really funny that Devens is one of only 4 people he votes with, what was it? It was Ron, Julie, and Eric tonight. Like, way to take yourself from being in the 5 of 9, and now you're number 3 in a group of 3. like he would have been in the top 5 of the 9. And now Ron doesn't care about Devens, and Julie doesn't care about Devens. That's how bad this play was for him. He got completely blindsided by every single person in this game tonight. And that's why this was so brutal for him.
Yeah, this was really tough. And I love when David is almost like talking like his dad. He was like, I'm not giving you your toy back until you can prove that you're like being an adult. I think he said, I'm not going to let him have it until he's being rational. And we see this is a fight that's going to extend to next week. This is something where like, I'm going to like self-admit, say that hindsight's 20/20. To your point, I like it because it hasn't become an idol yet. I like that it's become a topic of contention instead of it just being this idol now. Because that's going to add some really cool drama in the coming weeks, because they're one of the tightest pairs that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really cool about this idol is it wouldn't have worked if it was in Chris Underwood's hands. I went through all of this on our predictions podcast. And if you didn't listen to that, go listen to Bryce Isaiah, because it is truly a treat.
Unreal.
We know the episode is over, but just ignore the power rankings part and just listen to Bryce Isaiah talk about this cast. But when I'm looking at this, it getting into Rick's hands was the only person who actually had a close ally. But the fact that Rick's closest ally was David Wright, and David Wright is as good of a Survivor player as David Wright is, it makes it even more complex, because it's not just a guarantee now that David's also going to go out there and make this idol easy. I mean, this is really great right now. And I think it was Brett LaBelle was jokingly, maybe not even jokingly, but he has been spending time in the drunk tank, so who knows? But he was saying that there's so many advantages, and I know Malcolm was complaining about it, and so many people are complaining about the advantages. The advantages aren't that hard to follow. There's 2 immunity idols, and then there's this half immunity idol thing. And this half immunity idol thing is so much better than a regular idol. And we saw it not work for Ty, Scott, and Jason back in Co-Wrong, and it's probably not going to work again this time. And that's why this is a really cool idol, because it seems like it has power, but it's actually useless until you can actually put it together in a situation like the David season. Did I completely cut out? Okay.
Yeah. Good, all I heard was you say David. So start over.
Yeah. Unlike the Davids from last season. Is that what you got to? Yeah.
No, I heard David. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, then everybody missed a lot there. But so David Wright getting it makes for a really complicated. It makes it much more complicated than also if you go and the Davids from last season. Unless you have a group like that are trying to pull each other together, this idol might never work. Didn't work in Co-Wrong, and it probably won't work this season.
Yeah, I love the drama that it makes. I completely lost my train of thought on what I was saying there. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not going to work. And that, because it's not going to become David's idol, because I think like if Rick or David gets voted out, I'm assuming they can't like will it back to the other person. So it's just going to become this topic of contention, and no one knows it exists because neither party's going to tell anyone else about it, because it has 0 power right now. All it does is actually put a target on one of their backs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Rick can't go to people and be like, I want to get rid of David because he won't give me half of my idol. That's just going to be like, well, you have half of an idol. Oh God. Well, now we don't trust you either.
Yeah.
And Rick had the wool pulled over his eyes this week. That's really all it was. And he played emotionally, and you have to play with your head all the time. And I will say, for as emotional as we all thought War Dog was going to be, he is playing completely 100% with his head.
Straight logic.
If Julia didn't orchestrate the move tonight, I would say War Dog was MVP again. But Julia orchestrated this move, so I feel like it has to be her. Which, Alexa, congratulations, you get an MVP on your team.
I'm honored because you've been crushing it with the MVPs. I was actually going to now we're going way too early on this. War Dog put the bug in Julia's ear. Now we're just complimenting each other too much. I was expecting you to say that. So War Dog put the bug in her ear, but she is the one who executed it. So whichever side everyone is on, chicken and egg, that's who to vote for. But like you said, this isn't Julia's rebirth. This was Julia's birth. Like, I didn't really expect that to go anywhere. Because they edited it well when I think conversation was War Dog's buzzword. You know how Aubrey's was dialogue. War Dog was like, let's have a conversation. And he said that's Gavin. He said it's Julia. And I was like, oh crap, they're gonna make him look bad. And then Julia was like, wait a second, this is completely true. And I'm curious how obvious it was that Eric and Ron wanted this kind of side alliance with David and Rick, but it was clearly enough for, obviously, like, War Dog is the one who saw it because the other ones wouldn't have. But I'm impressed that worked out. I didn't expect them to get behind that because I know we were all saying, like, why would this group of 6 break up so quickly? But it makes sense when half of that, or when 2 out of the 6 is making a side alliance already at the final 12.
I know. That's what's insane. And so I have a lot of things to comment on that. First of all, what we thought we knew about Eric, we didn't, because we only knew that he was close with Gavin, and Gavin voted him out no problem tonight.
Yeah, so we can't put them next to each other.
We can't anymore. And Gavin did try to say, why not Ron? And I'm kind of wondering myself, why not Ron? Why did they go Eric over Ron? But we can talk about that in a second. The other thing, I thought the scene where War Dog was sitting down and literally they kept completing War Dog's sentence, whether he was talking to Gavin or Julia, and it just kept going back and forth. I thought that showed how great War Dog is actually playing out there on the island, because he was able to, in the minority alliance, sit down with 2 people, have the exact same conversation, and not do what Aubrey did. Because we saw this backfire on Aubrey earlier in the season when she was having the exact same conversations with people. People were going to each other and saying, can you believe she's saying this? Oh, well, you can't trust her. But instead, in this situation, Gavin and Julia were saying, he's right. He's not wrong. And all of this family visit stuff, we know that this always happens behind the scenes because of all the survivors we've talked to. But it never really comes to the forefront on the show unless it's one person might say to somebody, hey, I want to take you to the family visit. But this week, it was so much about the family visit. And that is something that survivors, if any future players are listening, you need to do exactly what Julia, Gavin, Victoria, and Aurora did tonight. Because if you're hearing, oh, we just want to get to the family visit, that's their way of saying, we're in a good spot. We don't want you to flip because we're in such a good spot. So that's what I think this was saying, and good on Julia, Gavin, Victoria, real and Aurora for saying, yeah, getting to the family visit's not what I want to do. I want to win. I want to win the entire thing.
Yeah, and that's where I think David had like the performance to end all performances as a tribal council, where he's saying, like, the family visit is, to a lot of people, I don't know if it's the end, but to a lot of people, it is this gigantic benchmark. It's so much bigger than making the merge. It's so much bigger than anything else except for winning. So it's such an easy thing to get behind. But he's like, he was right. He said, if you guys are going to play for that, then your resume is at whatever, 44 Edge of Extinction way or whatever.
44 Edge of Extinction Drive.
Yeah, I would love to know how he came up with the 44. But I mean, that was fantastic. And I think now that we're talking it out, maybe they chose Eric because Eric is the one who has like the quote unquote stronger external relationships, because Ron is the face of comma strong. He's like the absolute like head. Eric seems, or at least from what we were shown, Eric was more like interacting with the other people. So maybe that's why.
I forget who said this, and it might have been a secret scene. It might have just been an interview. It might have just been something that somebody tweeted. I completely forget what it was. But right now, one of the big plans, because Extinction Island exists, is to vote out the strongest members to make sure they have to spend as much time on Extinction Island as possible.
Oh, that's a good point.
And that was one of the reasons why Joe was voted out when Joe was voted out. And I think that's why Eric went home here. Because I think this is a message being sent to Ron. And maybe they were worried Ron had an idol because Eric and Gavin were close. Maybe Gavin thinks that if Eric had an idol, he would have known about it. Maybe they were worried Ron's feeling a little too comfortable. Maybe he has an idol. But, whatever. I just think, though, if you get rid of Eric this week, you can get rid of Ron next week, the week after, the week after. You can always get rid of Ron Clark. Getting rid of Eric might become harder, and the longer Eric can stay in the game, win a couple of rewards. They had Chinese food tonight. I mean,
oh my God, best reward ever.
I know. I wish I had Chinese food tonight. Like, Jeff, why aren't you sending me Wednesday night Chinese food? Because that's what supposedly everybody's eating. Yeah. But the more he can get that, the better off he's going to be. Well, now he goes to Extinction Island. Now you have Joey Amazing, Chris Underwood, and Eric Halfman out there on Extinction Island. Perfect. Because you're like, if you're playing this game like Victoria, Julia, you're saying to yourself, I'm never getting voted out to Extinction Island. I'm going to win this game the pure way. But you want to make sure that only one of those guys can come back into the game whenever they come back in, because they don't know exactly when they're coming back in, and not, okay, now I have Chris Underwood in the game, or Chris Underwood comes back and Eric is still in the game. How am I going to get rid of both of them before the final three, let's say? Now you don't have to worry about it because only one of them is going to come back in the game.
That's a really good point. That must have been a secret scene, but that's a really good point. And they were looking, well, we haven't talked about Extinction Island yet, but Chris was looking real skinny and Eric is looking really skinny. Like Joe still looks fine.
Yeah.
Like they are losing a ton of weight out there. And on Extinction Island, there's clearly not a ton of food going on. So that's a really good point to just deplete them and just keep them out there. And then to your point, only one of Chris, Eric, or Joe can come back now.
Yeah, exactly. And now the more people you vote off, now let's say David Wright goes home next. Well, now you have David, Aubrey, and Joe all out there. Don't have to worry about two returnees sitting with you at the final. You know what I mean? So I think that's what people are trying to do right now is get rid of some of these stronger people to weaken them early. And that might have had a big impact on Eric going home this week. Plus now, I mean, you can get rid of Ron next week, Devens next week. You can still get Kelly or Lauren, and they don't know they have idols, but you still think that option is open, because really, this was a great time to make this move, because if you're Victoria, Julia, Gavin, and why am I drawing Aurora? Thank you. So if you're the four of them, the other four, the Lesu four, as we're calling them, even though I don't think David is completely tied with them, it's Lauren, Wentworth, Wardog, and David. Now, you already know that David was thinking about going with the other commas. So you might think, okay, we can pull a 5 here, or it'll be 4-4 in worst case scenario. You also, despite the fact that you just blindsided Julie and Ron, they don't have a choice right now. But if you say to them, vote with us, they don't have a choice but to vote with you, because that just means they get to prolong their life. And Rick Devens has proven to be a wild card who absolutely hates the Lesu 4. So of course he would vote with you. So right now, despite the fact that they only have 4 in an 11-person alliance, or an 11-person tribe, there's so many paths for them to take in order to get the numbers back on their side.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. You reminded me with the like David not really being sure. That whole scene of like the Leso group trying to talk to Rick and Rick just not having it. That was like, this is why there are 2 returnees and then Rick. Like these 2 returnees are playing so like they're just straight playing game, and Rick was just completely blinded. So, and those are 2 people who really don't want, they're working together out of necessity, and you know what? It's kind of working for them. Like they're just so aware that they're going to be allied sometimes, they're not going to be allied other times in voting blocks, as Kelly Wentworth said, as we flash back to Cambodia. And Rick just wasn't seeming to grasp that.
Yeah. He wasn't, and I lost you for a second there, so I didn't hear all of it. But I got Rick. No, but it was my internet. It's not your internet. It's my internet for sure. But yeah, I agree with you. Like Rick just wasn't grasping this, and this what this kind of reminds me of right now. The way that this is shaping up is it kind of reminds me of Token Sheens, where you had the Jalapao 6 or Timbira 6, right? Was it Timbira? It was Timbira 6, and then was Jalapao the other side, or is Jalapao? Jalapao?
No, that was the other side. You're right.
Okay, so you had the Timbira 6 versus the Jalapao 4, and then Joe gets medevac, so now it's 6-on-3. And Timbira literally was just like, oh, we'll get rid of them later, we'll get rid of them later, we'll get rid of them later, we'll get rid of them, and now there's no time left. And that's kind of what this reminds me of, except it's such a large merge compared to back in season 18. But it feels like, oh, we'll just get rid of the Lesus when we get rid of them. We'll get rid of them. We'll get rid of them. We'll get rid of them. And all of a sudden, the infighting in Kama is just going to start to take over. And we're going to be looking at a final 6 that's, Wardog, Wentworth, Lauren, David, and then you get like Victoria and Julia as your last 2 members of Kama. And now the Lesu people start to eat each other, and somehow one of the girls, which would be Erin in the situation, actually wins it instead of losing it. But that's just what I'm getting a vibe of here is, these Kama people are just it was like so Kama strong. And then it becomes, okay, now let's vote one of our own out. But now you have a splinter of 4-2 against a group of 4-1, so there's just so many numbers all over the place. It's there's a lot going on in this episode.
But and we haven't talked about Edge of Extinction or that immunity challenge yet. But to further your point, Eric, I had to write this down directly because I was so flabbergasted that Eric said this. Eric is talking to Ron, I believe. And it was when Aurora was like, yo, why will none of you speak to me? And they were like, no, you're fine. And Eric said, Aurora has nowhere to go. They have zero power, in reference to that group of 5. Mm-hmm. And that I felt like that was just so closed-minded because there was plenty of power. You have no idea if they have idols or not. There are 2 point whatever idols over there. There's Aurora's about to get this extra vote, which she doesn't even need to use. And if Aurora moves, it's even. Of course they still have power. Well,
and this is why, we could talk about Edge of Extinction in a sec, but this is why I don't, I didn't love that Aubrey's just getting a hand in an extra vote to Aurora. I didn't love it. But this is also why I don't feel bad. Because Eric made that statement. And whether that statement was taken out of context or not, that statement was still made. And if you're playing Survivor and you ever make the statement of the other side has no power, you lose. And you deserve to lose. Because that...
The other side has 2 idol... Kelly Wentworth and David. The 2 best...
Yes.
Keep going. Sorry.
I completely agree with you though. And you never know what's coming into the game. You don't understand what Extinction Island is doing to the game. You can't say that people don't have power. That's such a season 1, 2, or 3 way of thinking. And I love when people do this anyway now when they have the majority. It's, I'm doing so well. The other side's done. They're just going to get picked off one by one. How many times have we really seen that? And, there was a stretch of pagonging seasons where we were just bored out of our minds. So it made it seem more relevant than it is. But unless Eric Haveman only watched season 22, 23, and 24 back to back to back before he came out on Survivor, there's no way he should ever think that the other side has no power.
I have many things to say that, but I'm first just laughing, thinking about someone only watching those 3 seasons going into it.
You've made a huge mistake.
You've made many mistakes in your life.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. I was like, this is because you're right. When was the last time this has actually happened? And Phil and I were texting for this. We were like, this is almost too obvious that Ron is going to go home because Ron gets the episode title of I'm the Puppet Master. Ron is the one doing the big hands in, comma. Ron's one saying family visit. It was almost too easy, but Eric was as much of a part of that. He just wasn't as loud about it. But when he said that, I was like, this is breaking up so fast because Victoria's a really smart player. I assumed Julia was a smart player, but now we actually know that she's a smart player. And Gavin and Eric, that was a quick turnaround that happened.
Yeah. This was an interesting episode too, because I've been preaching that Victoria's going to win the season and she didn't really speak much tonight. And the one thing we did hear from her was her saying, no, it's too soon. This isn't the right time. This isn't the right time. And then we didn't hear her kind of come back and defend that. So I think if we hear from her next week about why she got rid of Eric, then she's still on the right track. But tonight, Julia really took over the spotlight. Now I'm in no fear that Julia is getting a winner's edit over Victoria, but I just wanted to throw that out there now.
But Victoria she still ended up rolling with that group.
Yeah, that's what's crazy too. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why we didn't hear from Victoria is because if Victoria tells us I'm going to vote out Eric tonight, we know it's true. Whereas we don't know what power Julia has in this tribe. And all we know about Eric is that he's close with, or Gavin is that he's close with Eric. So I think that's why maybe we didn't hear from Victoria because we didn't know if the other people actually had the power to overthrow this alliance. And it made for a really good ending there because when Kelly and Lauren didn't play their idols, I knew that Kelly or Lauren weren't going home because there's no way either of them are stupid enough to have the wool pulled over their eyes like that. But the fact that they didn't play their idols and it was Eric and not Ron is what really floored me because I really thought it was going to be Ron.
Yeah, I'm glad that I can't even compare this to the JP Blindside because that wasn't even brought up to the viewer. I'm glad that as a viewer, we were told that it wasn't going to work because then it made for a surprise. Yeah. So I'm glad, or even if she said a confessional or she's like, I'm not really feeling this, I still would have liked that because I really wasn't sure if that was going to work. And the only person we thought it was going to be was Ron because Ron was the only name that was brought up.
And Ron's been so cocky the last couple of weeks. He's been I'm loving
awesome.
Ron. like loving Ron, but he's been kind of an ass the last couple of weeks. And I'm glad that he got blindsided this week. Sometimes, though, the best thing that can happen to you in the game of Survivor, when you're feeling really cocky, you get blindsided. At least it's not you. And now Ron can turn around and say, all right, I got to reevaluate because these comma six don't feel this close with me like I felt with them, and I better watch myself. It wasn't him. Eric's the one who takes the bullet there. Eric goes home. And now Ron gets a second lease on life here, and I think he'll do something with it. I really do. Will it work? I don't know, but I think he's going to try his hardest to figure something out because I think Ron's a really smart guy who just got complacent because we had John Carroll on 2 weeks ago. He was in the John Carroll position in that alliance. He had his 4 in the 7, and the 7 was in the 12, so you didn't have to worry about it. And he was feeling good.
Yeah. I was going to say something. Yeah, I think Ron, I think you're right. Like, Ron's a really smart guy. This is going to be his, like, oh crap, I was really out of this moment. Kind of in a sense, maybe not to as extreme of an extent, but kind of what Aurora had last week. Aurora kind of, I have to assume, knew she was somewhat on the outs, but now she's like, yeah, you guys completely screwed me. And I feel like they really weren't doing much to try to make her feel better.
No, it was awful.
Like, at all.
It was awful. And I guess we could talk about the challenge, and we'll talk about it.
Let's get
challenge
into
way
it.
better. So this whole challenge thing too, Aurora having the conversation while Lauren is passed out. Some people are probably sitting there going, "Oh, that bitch." No, that's not the case at all. Because if this was that serious, Jeff's stopping the challenge. Also, she can't see Lauren, so she doesn't know what happened. And Jeff's saying, "Continue, medical, get out here." And everybody who's sitting on the bench can sit there and say, oh, this isn't the time, this isn't the place. Until Jeff says, this is actually a medical emergency, so we need everybody to chill out. It's always the time and place. Survivor doesn't stop because Lauren passed out. And so I thought that was because Aurora was the one doing the talking. It pissed everybody off on the bench because they don't like Aurora. They don't want Aurora to win. And like, I don't know anything about Aurora because what have we seen? 3 minutes of her this entire season. But I loved that she did this. And I loved how frustrated she got. And this is an emotional moment because, look, Victoria had her eyes closed the entire time. She even opened her eyes for this. And this is such an emotional moment. Your blood pressure's going. You're in a challenge anyway. It's breaking you out of your zone. You don't know what just happened to somebody. So your anxiety, who knows what's going through your head in all of this. So of course you're going to get stressed out and try to like panic and end it. And if Victoria and all of them really cared so much about Lauren, they would have told Victoria to step down and end the challenge because Lauren's health is more important than getting Aurora out of the game. But they don't do that. They don't say that. So I don't feel bad for any of them.
I am 1,000% with that.
Okay,
I completely agree with all of that. Because before we went live, you were like, oh, we might disagree. And unfortunately, we're not disagreeing on this. I'm completely fine with it. I didn't even think about this, that Aurora and Victoria, obviously, because their eyes are closed, couldn't really see what was up with Lauren. And well, I mean, I guess we can completely talk through this. Like, I've never passed out before, and I've definitely never passed out from like heat exhaustion or not eating for 3 weeks. But it was really kind of eerie to watch Lauren be like, I am dizzy. This is not okay. It was like she knew it was coming and still couldn't stop, which was really freaky. And like they cut to her like just like dead body in the corner. Like that was like really freaky to watch. But Jeff, kind of like you said, Jeff was like, no, everyone keep going. Everything is still fine. Like, keep going. So I'm totally fine with Aurora going for it. And I'm totally fine with Victoria ignoring her because that was working for Victoria, just being completely still. And then at the end, like Victoria ends up losing. I actually thought Aurora was going to end up losing, and then this would be a super easy vote. But I'm fine with Aurora chirping at her. I'm fine with Victoria ignoring it. I think it was Julie who had a weird / not great episode. So we'll talk about her in a minute, but it was Julie who was like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this. And I totally get it. I wasn't there. I have not been starving. This is me totally being an armchair viewer here. But Jeff said it's okay. And I don't know how quickly Lauren came to, but of all people, it was Lauren whose first reaction was, I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like Lauren was like, damn, like this totally sucks. Like she's a total competitor. Lauren couldn't seem to have given a crap about it. So I guess why should anybody else?
Yeah. And this goes back, like, how many times do you think Jeff and the Survivor crew have watched somebody pass out on Survivor? Like, we seen Cole did it a couple seasons ago. We saw Joey Amazing do it in the challenge against Keith. I'm sure that there's crew members who pass out all the time on Survivor, doing these challenges, maybe just working in the sun all the time. They see it all the time. And yeah, Lauren's body was lifeless for a couple minutes, but like she passed out. I mean, athletes pass out all the time, and she's an athlete, in case you didn't know. So like she passed out, and I love her reaction, because that's the exact reaction that most people do have if they pass out in this type of environment. Now, granted, if you're sitting in your living room and you pass out, you're probably not going to wake up and be like, I'm embarrassed. You're probably going to wake up and call a hospital. But if you're in this situation, you're going to wake up and be like, damn it, I'm so mad at myself for that. I really wish I would have won, because you're a competitor, and that's you when you wake up, you're aware. You know, this wasn't the Russell Swan pass out where he's literally like walking around and his blood pressure was down to like nothing. You know, he really was just like a zombie. This was Lauren starving, overexerting her body, and falling over. And luckily she didn't hit her head on anything, and she's fine. And, you know, does anybody want to watch somebody lay on the sand like that? No, obviously.
It was not enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch that. But if Jeff doesn't say, like Jeff said to Dr. Joe, if you think I need to stop this challenge, you tell me. Dr. Joe didn't say it. Dr. Joe was like,
man, was like, screw you, Jeff. She's fine.
I mean, not to be mean, but until we're zipping up the body bag, Dr. Joe is not stopping any challenges. Like I mean, that guy, you know, there's no way. Who was it? Somebody on here, I think one of the people we had was talking about how he was like a Vietnam, or like he was like a war doctor. Maybe it was the Iraq
he's
war.
seen some shit.
So like I think it was Brendan, when Brendan was talking about him passing out, and Dr. Joe just said to him, like, don't stand up so fast. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So I want
to rewatch the Russ, because the Russell Swan one is like the most extreme version of what we've seen, because that stopped. Like that was a pretty immediate stop, because I remember he was blindfolded, so that's obviously different. And I think he was like kind of stuck on the puzzle. But yeah, I'm totally fine with it. I'm glad that Aurora won in the end, and Aurora and Julia, they came tonight. They finally happened. And everything I know about Aurora is not from the game. It's from seeing her on Twitter, and her whole brand, her whole thing is like, I've got a personality. Like, I am strong-willed. I tell it how it is. And I feel like we finally got to see that side of her tonight. And she is who she is, whether or not people like her. And I'm glad that this was her episode, because it's going to be controversial, and that fits her perfectly. Yeah,
it was very all emotions were elevated while this was happening. There were so many things going on at once, so there was no time to really comprehend what's going on. And I'm sure, like, I get why the people over on the bench were frustrated, because you're trying to figure out what's up with Lauren. And Jeff probably said, none of you get up, stay there. You know, but you're trying to figure it out. This is not like the Caleb situation. This isn't anything like that. Like, she went down, and it's ugly, but, you know, she didn't hit her head. And that's the only thing that really was going to happen. Somebody in here, I think Melissa Colt said, what sport do people pass out all the time in if athletes are passing out all the time? I mean, I ran all through high school and college, and when you go to track meets and stuff, you see people pass out all the time. I mean, people, like, when they finish a race, if they've like overextended themselves, they're falling over the line. They're just, I've seen it happen numerous times. So yeah, I'm
so behind on the live chat. It's just now populating. So Carl's here.
Hi, Carl.
Which didn't sup, Carl. So I get all emotions. I know I just kind of like didn't speak highly of Julie, but I get Julie. I get all reactions. I get Victoria ignoring. I get Aurora being mad. I get Lauren passing out, and I get Julie being mad. Like all parties, I totally understand. Which is probably why this was such a good episode, because a lot of people were emotional, and that makes for awesome TV.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. Like, this is what it comes down to. They didn't want Aurora to win. Like, it was Rick who was like, go Aurora. And David was like, I don't think that counts.
Best moment of the episode was 4 of the fittest survivors already out. And then Rick falls immediately. He goes, 5 of the fittest survivors are now out.
David was like, you did it for the joke.
Yeah, exactly.
that was really well done. But that's something that always blows my mind. And this happened in a recent episode, season. I guess this happened during David versus Goliath. It might have been when it was Alec versus Christian. But when you make it so freaking obvious, and when you're sitting in a challenge, an immunity challenge, and rooting for someone, I cannot understand that. Mm-hmm. It's just like so obvious to me. And Aurora is someone who's already feeling scorned, and there's no one's doing enough math to realize that you need her.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the craziest part. It's -6 versus whatever the other 6 was going to be. And I guess they were feeling really confident that they had David and Rick. But yeah, I mean, you are supposedly telling Aurora she's in with you, and Aurora is up there being really pissed off, and you're all just like, screw it. But like, Yeah, I mean, it's all amplified because Lauren went down. And I honestly don't even think Aurora was going to speak had Lauren not gone down. It just was, even her emotions were probably going crazy because you just want to turn your head and say, what's going on over there? And this was literally the one challenge where you can't look over. Any other challenge they do, if you're holding stuff, if you're, the one that coach did, whatever coach did that one time, if you're doing any of those challenges, you can look over and see how somebody's doing. In this challenge, you can't move your head. So you have no idea what is actually going on. You just know Jeff is screaming medical, and medical is there. And you know that the only other person who was standing was Lauren.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that was a perfect episode or the perfect challenge for it, like you said. Yeah, that was crazy. And also what Aurora was asking for, I think she said this at the beginning of the episode where she was like, oh, it's me and all my friends now. Aurora isn't asking for anything absurd. She's literally saying all she's told us is she wants to be with the numbers. That is not hard to accept that. Who wouldn't want an extra vote? So it's really weird to me that they thought it was okay to just not really acknowledge her. The only person we see talking to her is Ron, and it clearly didn't go so well.
Yeah, exactly. So do we want to talk about the part of the episode that I didn't like?
Let's talk about Edge of Extinction because this does tie back to Aurora. So
exactly. That's why.
Minimal, probably the least amount of Edge of Extinction we've seen yet. Talk to me. Let's talk through it.
I didn't like the Joe scene. I thought it was dumb. If it was any other person voted out, they would have never gone to it. Because it was Joe, we had to see Joe sitting there, and it didn't do anything to progress the story. And it was too in the middle. It was in the middle of there wasn't a commercial break it was coming out of or leading into. So it just felt like it was too forced. I didn't like that. And then the next one, Reem is a great narrator, but I didn't like how this went down because to me, it was obvious Aubrey was going to find this. And then also the fact that it's the exact same thing that happened when Aubrey herself received the extra vote. And to me, now you've recycled something within 3 episodes. That's really quick. There had to be something else that could have been done. And I wonder if Aubrey was still in the game, would this have even happened? And why did we need that? Why couldn't we just have Aubrey get the challenge advantage? Why did she also need to give somebody in the game this extra vote? Because I don't like that they've now done this twice out of 4 advantages that have even happened on Extinction Island.
Yeah, I go a couple ways with it. I guess I wish that they had done. I'm okay with the practice thing again. I think where I am with this is I don't know what more I want out of Edge of Extinction, and I don't know what more the Edge of Extinction can give me either. They can give them practice. They could give them more food. They could give them an advantage. And the extra vote advantage is that didn't work. And yeah, it's cool that it was Aubrey who got it, so Aubrey can now give it back to someone. Even though Aubrey was the second guess of who Aurora thought gave it to her, which is pretty funny. But I don't know. I guess would you have preferred if it was like a nullifier that she gave, or was it just the whole concept that you weren't into?
I kind of wanted something different. And right now, to me, it's so uninteresting to watch those 4 walk around that island looking for something. Because I'm at the point now, and no offense to Aubrey and no offense to Reem, but I'm at the point now where I think this next challenge is going to be physical. And, it's already showing you have to go through the loops and all of that. And I think it's going to be really hard for them to get back in. And I feel like I can already count Reem out. And so the more people that are back, did I freeze? I froze. So the more people that are going to keep coming back, I feel like I don't have an interest in what's going on there because there's so many people now and they're all living together on one island. I want to know just what's going on with them. I want as much time with these 12 people who are going to have to vote somebody out tonight. And I really don't care about the other 4 of them surviving on that island right now. I thought the Joe thing was all we were going to get. And I was like, all right, I guess that's our reminder. But then they went to it again and they spent probably 2 minutes there, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's enough that I could have had 2 minutes spent with Victoria, Julia, Rick flipping out, David, Lauren and Kelly talking about how they don't think they have to play their idol, Eric and Gavin having some sort of conversation to see how that alliance is breaking up. I would have loved to have seen any of that. And instead I got 2 minutes of them looking for something, Aubrey getting it, and me just being like, okay, cool. Now Aubrey has an advantage in the first phase of a challenge. It's going to end with a puzzle. So it means nothing.
Yeah, it's going to end in a puzzle. Exactly. It was like the reward challenge. I couldn't even tell you anything about the reward challenge except the fact that it ended in a puzzle. Yeah, I think it's two things. One, I don't think we want much more out of Edge of Extinction, and I really don't know what more it can give us without being a gigantic interference. So it's just it's like on its own Edge of Extinction. It's just like it's there. What I'd rather see is, now that we know that this is the jury, and now that we know that someone like Reem or whoever is like Reem or Aubrey might not ever interact with the people who are in the final three, I want them to be talking to each other, because I want to know what like the social politics are for when they will inevitably have to vote for a winner.
And that's something I would love to hear. I would have loved to hear tonight. How do they feel about Rick Devens? What is their take on him? How do they feel that Joe's back, and what's Joe's reaction to everybody who voted him out? Like, who is Joe never going to vote for at the end? Because we now know everybody in this game is going to be on the jury. Who would Joe never vote for, and how is that affecting Reem? Because the only people Reem knows she doesn't like. So like
Reem's votes up for grabs.
Up for grabs. And so that's something I would like to hear is who are you going to vote for? And I almost go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I'm going to let you go. You're going.
Okay. One of them might come back and be in the final three, so they got to manage each other.
Exactly. And that was kind of going to be the exact point I was going to make anyway. No, that's it. Because I think that right now, let's say Reem somehow wins, right? And she gets into the final three. Well, Reem has spent every day on Extinction Island with all of these people. So they all know Reem really well, and Reem has not had to vote out one person. Now, I also think that Reem has such an abrasive personality that she's done more damage than probably half the people who blindsided Eric tonight. But I do think that, like, Reem getting into that situation makes for a really interesting dynamic, because whether you love Reem or you hate Reem out on Extinction Island, you've lived with her and you've just been around her, and you know how hard she worked to get to that point, and how she had to spend, at that point, she would have had to spend 36 days on Extinction Island, or like 30 days, 33 days, then get back into the game and spend 3 days in the game to get to the final three. And you might respect that because she didn't ever have to vote you out. And everybody else in this game did. Like, is Eric ever going to vote for Victoria, Julia, Gavin, or Aurora after tonight? I don't know, probably, because I think he's a competitor. But yeah, it's really tempting if Joe gets back in the game to just vote for Joe to win.
Yeah. That's what, like, at the end of the day, I'm so curious to see what happens if someone from the Edge of Extinction is in that final three, because, like, for the sake of this season only, this is such a completely different factor. But, like, if Reem's the one who gets there, you got to give her respect, because she literally lasted as long as any person could. So you either vote for her from that kind of, like, not strategy, like, game standpoint, or you vote for her you vote against her emotionally because you literally can't stand her. And that is going to be the ultimate, like, people always wonder, how do people vote? That's going to be the best, if it happens, that'd be the best dichotomy.
Do you see any of these people so far right now that are on Extinction Island getting to final three? Okay, so I'm not saying back in the game. I just mean final three.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. So when do we think they get back in the game?
Probably final six.
Okay, so they're in the final six. So they would have to be safe for 2 more votes and then win a fire.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Because if this person comes back, are they going to get a half idol, or are they going to get someone to help them? So then it's, like, really tough.
I think that's too late in the game to give them something.
That's kind of insane.
Yeah, we've seen it happen before, but I think that's too late in the game to give to somebody who, like, got back in. Their chances that they got back in, like, Tina didn't get anything when she came back into the game, and Ozzy didn't get anything, and I don't think you should. I just don't see any of these getting to the end, because I don't think they have strong enough alliances that are going to make it to the end. Like, if the next person to go home were to be Kelly Wentworth, I could see Kelly Wentworth getting back into the game, despite the fact that she sucked at challenges this season. Kelly, what's going on? But I think that I could see Kelly getting back into the game, and I could see Lauren and War Dog or David all still being in the game, and her being able to say, look, you still need me to vote out the other 2 people that could go to the final 3 instead of you. And then she's sitting there at final 4 and just has to win a fire making challenge, which on her 3rd time playing Survivor, I hope Kelly Wentworth is good at making fire. So
I would hope.
Yeah. So I think, like, if maybe one of these Lesu people get voted out, I could see it happening. One of the 4 who voted together tonight, that's not Aurora. So Julia, Gavin, or Victoria, I could see making it happen. but I don't see anybody who's there right now. I don't really see Ron pulling it off. I don't see Julie Rosenberg pulling it off, and I don't see Devens pulling it off a second time.
It's got to be someone who has a best friend who's still in the game. Like Kelly or Lauren needs to get blindsided by someone who's not that person. And then, like, let's say Kelly gets blindsided. Lauren still has to be in the game by the time Kelly gets back for her to have a chance.
Absolutely.
I think, I think the way I see it going, and this is still so early, maybe they're just used as a number for that first vote, and then they're out at final 5.
Yeah, that I could see happening. And that also depends on who it is, because you're never going to use Joe for a vote because Joe could always win. But you might use somebody like Julia Carter as a vote. You might use somebody like Victoria as a vote, but you're never going to use, really, I look at everybody out there other than Reem, you're not going to use any of those people as a vote because they could all win their way to the final 3, except for Reem. Yeah.
I want Reem to get back just because I have no idea of like what she would do. Like I have no idea where she would turn because she hates everybody. And I don't know. That would just make for amazing TV chaos.
Watch this turn into like what happens almost every time, where one of the more recent people voted out just gets back in, and all those people who stayed out there for so long end up just being bummed that they stayed there for so long.
I feel like that like very easily could happen.
Yeah. That's what it seems like. That's what definitely could end up happening here. The one other thing I wanted to point out was the fact that Kelly Wentworth's life sucks so bad on the island right now that even when a fly is attacking her by the fire, it follows her to her confessionals. And she just can't get away from anything. I just feel like Kelly Wentworth and Survivor, it's like Sandra Diaz-Twine goes on Survivor and like the seas part for Sandra Diaz-Twine to walk her way to the end. And when Kelly Wentworth gets there, it's just fires and volcanoes erupting and earthquakes and natural disasters and like people attacking her at all times. Everything that could go against Kelly Wentworth always seems to go against Kelly Wentworth. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Even flies. Even flies, annoying the hell out of Kelly Wentworth.
And weirdly enough, and this is kind of probably why Aubrey went home so early. I feel like she only knows how to play this way, so it's kind of like works for her. And I'm glad you said that because I think when the bug started harassing Kelly, Julie said something along the lines of, "I don't know what it's like to not have a reward." That was, when Kelly started, I think she started her confessional with like, "Oh my God," I was like, "She's gonna destroy Julie," and instead, she was like swatting the fly. That was crazy. That was like, and I know that there was a really funny secret scene where Julie was describing like the 17 different meals they were going to have that night. And then Julie's the one who like made it pretty clear that she wasn't on Aurora's side with the whole fainting thing. Julie did not have a great episode tonight. And I think she's really funny. I think she has a really funny delivery, and I think it's her personality. But saying that to Kelly and Lauren, who has her main content is that she's starving, that wasn't great.
Yeah, Julie to me feels like one of those people who goes out 10th, 9th, somewhere in there. She won't go next week. I think that would be Ron, or maybe there's another blindside on somebody else, or maybe Aurora just goes home next week because everybody's tired of Aurora. But I don't see it being Julie next, but I feel like Julie, if she makes it into the top 6 or 7 of the season, I'd be really surprised unless she's coming back from Extinction Island at that point. So I think Julie's days are numbered, and it could be much sooner than later.
Or I think maybe she gets to the end and like, because I think from a fan perspective, I think like she's liked. I fear that like she gets to the end and then everyone rips her and we're like, wait, what? We only had like a couple clues that maybe Kelly or Lauren or whoever weren't into her.
What a journey she has though to get to the end. She being close with girls, which we've seen like her and the girls kind of butting heads. She has to get one of the Lessues. Her only ally left in the game is Ron Clark.
Yeah,
because Rick Devens is not her ally. Even though she defended Rick Devens isn't her ally.
I don't know who Rick Devens is allied with, because
Rick Devens is allied with no one.
He's still close enough with David. Like there's still a trust there with David, but I mean maybe not. I mean the only thing we saw was them arguing about the half an idol, but it's not like he was like, oh, you're one of them, I'm so against you. Like there's still some relationship there, but I think David is like kind of ready to move on.
Just like even the little David line of I hope you didn't do this for the joke, it almost reminds me of one of those things where like you can tell that somebody you're close with is mad at you. So you're like, hey, here's like a little like jab, and you're hoping that they'll just like get over it, but they just won't get over it. Yeah. That's what that felt like to me. It felt like David was just trying to make any small talk with Devens to get Devens back on his side. And Devens didn't want to hear it. And Devens got cocky and he got emotional. And he shouldn't have done either of those things because he'd be fine. If he would have just played up like, yes, I love the Lesu people. I would love to work with all of you. I know you voted me out once, but we'll worry about it later. And then he turns around and says to David, you, me, Aurora, and get Julia, and that's going to be our final four.
Mm-hmm.
That works. But he didn't do that. Instead, he just screamed.
Yeah. What else? What else am I missing here? I feel like we got a lot. Other than I love Chinese takeout reward. That was the first time that I actually cared about what they got as a reward, and now I want Chinese food.
Yeah, I agree.
I think starting next season, we are officially going to remove all hashtag references from the prop bet because Gavin literally said hashtag game changer, which is like beyond a meme at this point. And
there was no hashtag blindside for Eric, who was incredibly blindsided.
Yeah, so we're gonna need some suggestions for new prop bets if anyone has an idea. So Eric, Julia, Victoria, and Aurora as of tonight hit enjoying / whatever 5+ rewards. Aurora had an immunity win, which is super exciting.
Yep.
Ron had the episode title because he was the puppet master for 2.5
somehow
days.
Is still in the game, even though it was very obvious he was going home.
Yeah, that was the what was her name? Jessica, I'm the queen bee kind of comment. Victoria said shoot your shot, which I think is amazing because we see their work.
She kept her feet. That was what's really important.
Yeah, she kept her feet. I liked that. That was good. And yeah, so that's it for props. Eric makes the jury. I guess like when someone comes back, we'll decide what we do with the
I think we have to count it. Because Jeff said, let me bring in the 5 members of your jury, 4 members of your jury. So they made the jury. They just might be the first people to get off of the jury. Like we had Neil made the jury in Koron, despite the fact that he didn't actually vote at Final Tribal. So I think we have to count all of these people who are making the jury.
Yeah. So yeah.
So I'll give a little 1 there for Joe, and I'll give a little 1 here for Eric.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like we kind of hit everything. This was a great episode.
Yeah, the only thing we go back to is MVP, which you wanted to give to War Dog, and I wanted to give to Julia.
Nice. So I'm gonna pick Julia. Phil has been absolutely
War Dog.
playing it with Phil's been absolutely dominating the what is this thing called? Fantasy game. Any win that Vaughn or I ever get for the rest of the Survivor Special existence will not even compare to this because this is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have all 5 of my team intact. I've won 4 of the 5 MVPs. One of the people who won MVP though that I didn't have was Victoria, and I was the only one who even considered picking Victoria. So yeah, it's been quite a ride. I want to thank everybody, and I just can't wait until I'm assuming that the final 5 has to be War Dog, Wentworth, Lauren, David, and Ron. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm assuming at this point that just has to be the final 5. It's crazy tonight because I was like, all right, they're talking about splitting the votes between Wentworth and Lauren, and then everybody else is talking about voting out Ron. So I was like, all right, so 2 of my girls are going to have to play their idols, and then Ron's going to get voted out. And instead, Wentworth and Lauren both don't play idols, and Ron doesn't get a single vote. So, Mike, I have 2 idols on my tribe. I have Ron, the puppet master, who somehow doesn't go home when they try to take out the puppet master.
You've got David, who's like kind of the real puppet master right now. No, you're crushing it. There's no question. War Dog is playing the most logical game out there.
Yeah, War Dog is playing absolutely out of his mind right now. He's playing so good. Yeah, I mean, whoever everybody wants to vote for between War Dog and Julia here, either one of them is a good MVP. I think Julia, it was her move. Ultimately, she had to pull the trigger. But I do think that you're right. War Dog put it in her head, and he did a great job putting it in her head and Gavin's head. And we didn't see him talking to Victoria. And that might have been the best move for him to not talk to Victoria, because if he talks to Victoria, then that might look sketchy and she might run back to everybody. So, yeah, he could win it easily.
Yeah, and great job again, this shows how little we knew about the common dynamic, but Gavin, Julia, and Victoria, who in my mind were like a pretty random group of 3, they're the ones who made this big move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was this was a really good episode. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen next. Alexa, before you take it home, we're going to be jumping on to do our quick power rankings update. Eric going home this week made it a lot tighter for everybody involved. So make sure if you're a patron, $20 patron who's involved in the power ranking, you're about to get that. So,
and if Alexa, your name is Mitchell Olis, you can send us your power rankings. You haven't sent it to us in 3 weeks.
I mean, and we're donating to our poverty fund over here.
Yeah, and it makes Phil and I look like we're doing slightly better than we are. So So yeah, thank you for not doing a power rankings.
I guess I'll say it on this podcast. I just want to make sure everybody knows all is right in the world. I am now ahead of Alexa because Eric went home.
This was getting, I didn't like being ahead. It was made me uncomfortable. I'm still in the eliminator game, which is confusing. I need to be losing more games because that feels more like home.
Exactly. And congratulations to Vaughn tonight in the eliminator game. Ron, I'm thinking Ron went home. Congratulations to nobody. We still have not had a single person get voted out from any of the eliminators the survivors, Alexa, myself, or Vaughn have picked.
How is this going to end?
In 5. It's going to end with whoever comes back from Extinction Island being the person we all have to use the last week.
Yeah, exactly. I know for some reason I kept thinking Ron went home tonight, but he didn't. He's very much still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
still killing it.
If you want to take us home.
So with that, if your name is Mitchell Olas, please send us 3 weeks worth of power rankings. But if your name is not Mitchell Olas, make sure to become a patron of the Survivor Specialist. We are going to be doing our Q&A podcast next week. For anyone who's a $5 patron, we are looking for, as usual, we're looking for recommendations for a retrospective podcast that the $10 patrons like to hear from us. And if you want to be a $20 patron and participate in this power rankings game that we'll be talking about after this, make sure to join. It's been a ton of fun. Like it's been fun instead of just having like the two of us and the survivor. It's been fun having 15 to 20 people doing this with us. We have a mother-daughter combo, so mother-son combo doing it. But anyways, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We are 2 subscribers away from 4,600 subscribers on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, listen to us on iTunes. And this Sunday, we are going to be joined by Guatemala's own Brian Corridon at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We are super pumped for this. We did a Guatemala rewatch 2 summers ago at this point, and Brian was like a standout character on the season. And we're super, super excited to have him on. So yeah, make sure to tune in for that. I'll be posting the prop bet standings this weekend. I will not be posting anything about the boot list because we have 2 people who are currently not in the game. And with that, we'll see you guys on Sunday.
One more thing. If anybody wants to get a real preview for this Brian Corridon thing, go back and listen to our Judd Sargent interview.
Yes.
We did a Judd Sargent interview those 2 summers ago, and I completely forgot. And we got to throw that out there now because there's no other time that you should listen to it other than now. It was a great time. Judd held the phone so close to his face. You can barely see him the entire time. But go check that out. We talk about the last 3 episodes of Survivor Guatemala with Judd Sargent. He has ADD, in case anybody forgot, and we'll get to hear all from Brian this week, which should be a lot of fun. Because he's like a more calm version of Judd.
Slightly. Yeah. And if you guys thought we had technical difficulties with Bryce 2 nights ago, Phil was on the phone with Judd for probably an hour trying to get Judd to figure out how to use Google Hangouts. And I was texting Phil. I was like, I'm sick of this. I don't feel like doing this. Let's reschedule. And Phil powered through teaching this guy how to use Google Hangouts.
And it was amazing.
It was awesome. And then he held the camera in the FaceTime right under his chin the entire time. Yep. It was unreal. So anyways, tune in this Sunday. We're going to be talking to Brian, who will hopefully have better connectivity than both Bryce and Judd. We will see you guys on Sunday.